Muy buenos días, aquí estamos un día más en este canal, El Piano de Sam, charlando con gente genial y hoy tenemos un día muy especial y vamos a hacer este programa en inglés, ya que nuestra invitada pues habla inglés, no habla español, ella es de Dinamarca. So right now I'll switch to English, and as I just said in Spanish, we have a person invited today that speaks English and actually speaks Danish because she's from Denmark. So, hello, Heidi. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing fine, and thank you for inviting me.
It's my pleasure. Um, so, Heidi, um, we're going to talk about porn, and we're going to talk about many things of this topic. But I first would like for you to introduce yourself, and at least you are a sexologist. You are a person that has been fighting against porn. So explain a little about who you are and what you do, please.
Right. Well, probably I should start saying I'm a mother. And that's kind of what got me into the porn business. I have 9 children, 7 boys. And back in 2000, a young woman of 18 years old, she started questioning porn on Danish national TV, which this company had licensed to put porn on a national TV channel.
Wow.
And she started like a movement, and I got to hear about it and signed a petition, and was really, I felt like I had responsibility to do something, first and foremost on behalf of my own children, because I was like, yeah, hey, that's not all right. In Danish supermarkets and tank stations and so on, you could see magazines that were pornographic, or porn magazines that would be in the open, so even children could access them. That was just one minor thing, and then it was, of course, the national TV. So I took initiative to go into this movement and help out and get petitions, and we had an enormous support. We had about 21,000 signatures within about half a year. And so we could see that we had a traction in the civil society. And this was among both youth, older people, young people, parents. So we thought that we needed to start an organization or an association. So we started an NGO in December of 2000 after we delivered all the petitions to 2 of the ministers in our parliament, saying that we've got a problem here. We need to look critically at pornography and not just say, well, we're sexually liberal here in Denmark. Denmark actually was the first country to legalize pornography back in 1969. So today I usually say it's kind of part of the Danes' DNA to be very porn liberal and sexual liberal. But now it's a big problem, because the porn, as it has evolved and escalated with the internet and devices, is very, very harmful, and it escalates in so many different areas that most people, they have no clue. But I usually say that every family on this planet is affected by pornography in some negative or harmful way. So that's kind of how I started out. And then since 2000, my curiosity and interest for pornography, but also sexuality, has been like a pinnacle for me. And so in 2008, when I was appointed to chair the organization, I thought, hey, I don't have the professional or I don't have the foundation, the knowledge to be able to answer questions, and not, be in media with a journalist and looking kind of dumbfounded. So I thought I need to educate myself. So I took a degree and trained myself in sexology, couples counseling, and I've done several others, educations, and I've also specialized in sex and porn addiction. So that's kind of my background. So now with my 9 children, I've got 10 grandchildren. So I'm still working for the children, and now it's basically it's for the children all over the world and the youth as well. because it's a huge problem that they have access to online pornography, whether it be hardcore aggressive or even just, the slighter genres.
So I was thinking while you were talking that actually I've seen this in my country when I was a kid. I remember in a lot of especially, I don't know why, gas stations or even I don't know, little shops of magazines that you could see perfectly people naked in those were porn magazines and all that. I think now that's luckily more controlled, actually, at least in here. And it was really impressive for me when you said of the national TV over there. Now, my question is, okay, so this is not a topic I would personally hear a lot of people. I'm talking here to talk about, and probably this is not a popular topic, of course. But I would like to know, okay, so first, what are the issues that porn brings? So I don't know if there's a difference between the porn addiction or just I just watch some porn whenever I want, but I'm not an addict or whatever. So what are the problems of watching porn?
There is a lot of things that can be a problem. Not everyone gets maybe problems from it, but I think it's fairly all right for me to say that it, for most cases, brings a distorted view of sex, relationship, intimacy, body parts, gender. So that's kind of an overlaying issues that many are not aware of. It also can create gender-based violence, especially towards women, because that's what most of mainstream porn is. It's very aggressive and violent, and usually towards women. So there are a lot of issues around porn. It can create addiction. It can create compulsive use of porn. We have a term that we call problematic use of porn, which doesn't need to be addiction, but it can be problematic if you're looking at genres that are illegal of different kinds. It also can disturb relationships, the intimacy, the way that you think you should have sex in a relationship. It can disturb the minds of children. They can be traumatized. Even grown-ups can be traumatized from some of the pornography that's out there. It can also desensitize, so that your empathy and your feelings for another person can be diminished, because the more you maybe use of something and you get used to like a behavior of something, then you will normalize it and push yourself. So many people, they will escalate into more and more advanced and maybe aggressive and violent and maybe even criminalized pornography, which is CSAM, which is children's sexual abuse material. We used to call it child pornography, but that's a no-no word today. We have to call it what it is. And also into degrading and hardcore porn, and I could go on. Nasty stuff.
I remember just in a few videos, and again, this is material that I just found on the internet talking about the dangers of porn. But seriously, here I don't see anyone doing what you guys are doing. I remember that one of the problems that specifically said that porn could bring is erectile dysfunction in men.
Yep.
And also it talked about how the whole thing of becoming like a drug, because while you watch it and your body segregates the serotonin, that is like the happy feeling hormone and all that stuff, and you need more serotonin for the next time, and that becomes a behavior similar to what happens with drugs in your body. I don't know if that's another thing, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's that's one part of it. One of the other parts of like the hormonal or the chemical system is the dopamine, which is maybe even the most important to identify, because the dopamine is what I usually call the gimme drug. So it's the dopamine that will give you I want, and kind of bring you up to what we call the acting out. So in the acting out phase, you would say it's watching pornography and masturbating, right? Or if there are other elements to your acting out that can be more severe or more nuanced. And the dopamine, when you get triggered by something, let's say, to put it into another way of looking at, let's say that you see a picture of a piece of cake that you really like. Then your mind is triggered, and then you might start, having saliva in your mouth, and it's like, you can already, that triggers you to like, oh, I would like a piece of cake. And then you would start thinking, how can I get the piece of cake? And this might not be in a conscious way. It might be subconsciously, because the trigger kind of set on the, oh, I want. And the more you kind of engage with that, the more you will do to finally get to the store to buy the cake, or in the cupboard to get the cake, or whatever it is. And if you don't stop at a certain point, you have the dopamine that will be flooding your frontal lobe. And when the dopamine, research has shown, floods the frontal lobe, then you're kind of more or less put out of the game, because it's like no point of return. And I know all my clients, they know that. When I work with them, they'll just say, well, I don't know how I got from A to B. I know the acting out part, and I know afterwards, like, oh, darn it, I did it again, or whatever. But all the other interim phases, they don't know. Like, from what happens from when you're triggered until you get up to the acting out. So dopamine is definitely one of the very important chemicals that most they don't know about, and know that it's way before you actually get the triggers or see the triggers, because they're all over the place, that you have to kind of know, what am I going to do in this situation, right? Yeah. So what am I going to do if I see a cake? Yeah. Well, I'm not going to have any cakes in my cupboards. Or I need to tell myself, oh, it's just because I saw a cake. Now I have to do something else, or something like that, right? So, that's really true. And with the erectile dysfunction that you also mentioned, there's what we call porn-induced erectile function. And it has just exploded in men, and even in very young men.
That's what I heard, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's porn. We've never had the amount of young men who have had erectile dysfunction. It's not normal for a young man to have erectile dysfunction. His body is fit and fine, and it's fresh, and he should just be able to get, what do they call it in English? When he's aroused. To have an erection. To have an erection,
yeah. Okay.
I was just thinking erectile. To have
I was thinking, like there can be some dirty words to say that.
and that's actually also really a problem. And Viagra as one of the drugs that men can get prescribed so that they can help their erection. A lot of doctors don't know that it's porn induced, that the men are having problems with their erections. And the prescription medicine on Viagra and the others have also just gone up. Yeah, and instead, the doctors should say, "Are you watching porn? Well, try to stop that for about 2 or 3 weeks and see if that helps your problem first."
Wow. Yeah, because Viagra, for example, like I've always heard, especially when I was a kid, this is for very old men or whatever. The old men have these problems of erectile dysfunction, all that. But yeah, I mentioned this to you because I've heard the number of these cases we're arousing to. So, okay, so we talked about what problems can cause in in adults and all that stuff, but with the internet and the easiest way to access all this, probably the amount of people watching porn has increased, of course. It's free, it's accessible. If they may ask if you're under 18 or not, you just would say no and whatever, of course. Or for kids, I mean, my question is, what can cause to young people, really young people, the damages of watching porn?
And that's a really good and very important question.
Because I don't think it would be the same problem. I mean, well, I don't know. Just please explain to me.
If you're older, especially if you're past 25 years, the damage or the harm or the negative effects will probably predominantly be less, because your brain has already developed and matured. So one of the big problems is that children's brains and youth, the brains of youth, are under development. They're maturing. They're taking in information, not just information, but also stimulant that is coming in. And all these stimulants, whatever it is, but especially porn, affects the brain and will make neural pathways in the brain more than if it's an older person that can, has his frontal lobe and the back part of his brain. They're better synchronized. If that's a word I can use. Whereas children and youth, the brains of youth are not. We know that, like, if you drink at a very early age, you will be in a risk group for becoming alcoholics.
Yeah.
Or misusing alcohol. It's actually the same with pornography. So, and I just want, before I start talking about some of the, harmful issues about it, just say the thing about porn is free. And that's a term that we all use, but in fact it is not, because when you go on the site, you're paying with your data. So every time anyone actually goes onto the internet, unless we've made some, all these cookies and we've said no, things like that, you are paying with your data. You're paying with your footprints all over. And if you go into the websites, even the porn websites, they are tracing you. They're tracking you, even kids.
Wow.
And they know, they probably more, or in some way, not directly, but like in a big mass, they know the preference of who goes in there. And then they will put in like, oh, now you're back. Okay, would you like to see this and this and this and this? And for each time, it will become a little bit more maybe aggressive, depending on what you were looking at, right? So if you were for vanilla porn, which is some of the, the most soft porn, and you stay there, they might show you that as, one of the boxes out on the side, but maybe just tag it up a bit. If you're into more violent, you'll get, so they know. It's like a menu. You go to a restaurant and they know, oh, you usually have, but would you like to try this and this next time? So it's not free. And also the personal costs is also something that we're paying with. And in some issues, some people, they pay with their life, because unfortunately it can also lead to both stress and depression and even suicide. I do have a client who is very, very messed up because of his porn youth. He has daily suicidal thoughts. So this is some of the really bad stuff. But back to the kids. It's basically some of the same things that I started saying. It can give you disrupted ideas, thoughts of how sex is, how our bodies should look like or look like, how we interact with each other in intimacy, the relationships between, I'm just going to say gender, because you've got men and women, but you've also got, LGBTQ and how they interact with each other. It affects everybody, no matter which, gender you or sexual orientation that you have. And so a lot of children, they can get quite confused as well into what is this sex business, and the thing to define what is sex and what is pornography is just quite blurred, because if they get access to pornography, like in Denmark, the statistical age for the first time that kids, they get an iPhone or a smartphone is 7 years old.
Wow.
7 years old. So as a 7-year-old, you have a door open to the digital universe with everything in there, unless your parents are like some of the
control really well. And
and a lot of parents don't, because they don't, maybe they know or they don't know, or they don't get it done. So basically they're handing over this device to their kids with an open world to everything. Wow. And in the porn world, everything is a lot of really, really, really bad, crucial, violent, deathly things. So that's like one thing. And kids, they can, the earlier they are, they can get very traumatized. We've had cases with psychologists who work with this. When they have clients, when they have children or they have youth, they will bring up the subject because the kids or youth themselves, they don't bring it up because they don't know that porn is probably one or maybe the reason why they're having mental bad health or what it might be. And what some of the cases is that, a child is really, really unhappy and sad, and then they find out, well, it's because they've seen some porn, and then the child what is daddy doing to mommy? Yeah. And then they'll get traumatized about that. Some will think, is that what I have to do when I, get older and grow up? So basically it's the same things. And it also, unfortunately, it also goes in and kind of tampers with their hormones. They will maybe become sexual active very earlier, which we have a new report. I can just show you. In November, our association, we launched this report. Whoops.
Yeah.
We went out and interviewed young people in the age of between 15 and 18-year-olds. And so this is a report about how digital content of a pornographic character influences children and youth, seen from their perspective. It will come in English in a small version after summer, and it will be on our website, so you can go out and download it and see the numbers from Denmark, and both how it affects them. And we've been very direct, and we asked them in the quantitative survey 48 questions, which is quite many in a study like this. So we've got a lot of data, and we've put this in our report, some of it because we had a lot. And the mini version will be out after summer, so you can download it. But this report just shows us many of the venues they take, what they think, how they feel they're affected, how they look at their body and their body parts, how they feel that porn is taken into if they have any sexual interaction with another person, that they feel like they have been asked to do things that they see in porn. So they also get distorted in a lot of ways. But children, it's just, at the child's level where they haven't developed like abstract thinking or being able to analyze or filter out things, they're much more vulnerable. And even if you're like 15 or 18-year-old, and even if you're in the 20s.
Wow. Okay, so I remember I had a bad experience when I was younger. I mean, not a kid, but I don't even remember what age I was. And I remember that I was a good boy. I never watched stuff like that, but you always have, especially older acquaintances that don't have your same principles, values, or whatever. And I remember in this one occasion, so some people were laughing about a video or whatever. And I was like, what's going on and stuff. And basically they showed me a video of some bestiality, I think it's called in English. Yeah, like someone having sex with an animal. I remember this, probably I was, I don't know, 15 or 16, I want to say. And I remember that some of those images stacked into my mind for a long time.
Yeah.
Like it was a huge impact at that moment to me.
Yeah.
And I was in some way, probably I was traumatized for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so coming back to talking about this, you have clients that have issues with this porn addiction. What exactly can be done with people that already have an addiction to porn and all that? Because sometimes, before you said that with the whole thing of dopamine, there's a point of no return and all that. So is there any hope, or how is that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And fortunately, because we know so much more about the brain, we're learning so much in these, in these years. We also know that our brain is formable, even, till we die, basically.
Mhm.
So we can change what's going on in the brain and the neural pathways, but it takes an effort. And one of my, buzzwords, or the thing that I really use a lot of energy on teaching, but helping my clients work with and understand, is being conscious aware. We have to lift ourselves up to be very conscious about our everyday living, what's going on, why am I doing, where am I heading? And I teach them that we need to know that, like, 90 to 90% of what we do every day is based on a subconscious, the way we have lived our lives, what our parents have taught us, things we've experienced in peer groups, things we've learned in school. It's like on the the automatic pilot that we have.
Mhm.
And therefore we need to be, we have to pull up ourselves sometimes in the ears or the hairs to be in a more conscious state of mind and being, to work with it. And so there is absolutely ways to work with it, and you can get out of it. It's hard to say if a person will kind of have to deal with it for, I'm not going to say the rest of your life, because when you grow older, your bodily functions, they go down, and then the things that give you a kick, you probably won't, when you're 80, get the same, erection function that you had when you were in your 20s.
Mhm.
But some might deal with it because it also causes an effect on your thinking and your ways of behavior and your lust patterns and what you do in your everyday life, because that's like the blueprint of not who you are, but what you do with yourself, and what prints you set out there in life. So basically it's about having the person acknowledge that they have an issue.
Mhm.
And most who come to me, they've been pushed there by their partners, their spouses, when they find out, a lot of times accidentally, that they're watching porn, or the porn has also escalated into other sexual activities outside of the relationship or the marriage or something like that. Um, and so I see it as one of my finest accomplishments in the first stages, is to have them acknowledge that this is an issue, it's a challenge, it's a problem for themselves. And they need to know that I'm doing this for myself too. I'm not just doing it because my wife is sad about it, but they
Mhm.
need to acknowledge that it's a problem for me, and it's affecting the way I look at myself, intimacy, sex, women, men, or what it might be. That is their, special profile
Mhm.
of how it's affecting them. And when doing that, I help them to look at how it affects them in their life, look at the different phases or the cycle that they're in, and then have them actually just work on bringing their lifestyle into a better order, so that they get a more healthy lifestyle. And that's looking at sleep patterns, eating, emotional wellness, apart from both the physical and the psychological wellness. It's talking about, with some, it's also about spirituality in their everyday life, if they have a spiritual life. Excuse me.
Okay.
And then it's just, more or less keeping them on track, but also helping them know that some of their behaviors, they have been wired in their brain. And I
Mhm.
usually use the analogy of bicycling. um, most people in Denmark anyway, they know how to bicycle. And those who do know how to bicycle, they know how hard it was in the beginning and how you would have to have concentration on, holding on, pedaling, keeping the balance, looking after you're not going to hit anyone, and how long that took to just get all of those things coordinated into each other. And once that is done and you've taken the ride several times, it gets automatic and then it sinks down into our subconscious. And then we don't have to think about it anymore. That's what happens when you frequently use pornography. And you usually do it in connection with some other activities, whether it's because you're emotionally kind of medicating yourself, if you're unhappy, or if you want to give yourself a high, then you put it together with other things. And so you have to kind of learn to uncycle, if that makes sense, and then learn new, ways to either, if you're feeling sad, what can I do apart from just hopping on to the computer or my telephone and get my little fix from there.
So here in the comments, father figure for you is saying that there's a video of Dr. Lustig, MD, of the UCSF Department of Pediatrics, and it breaks down the biology of pleasure, addiction, and porn. The whole thing of pleasure versus happiness. I'll watch it later. Well, I don't know if you know this Robert Lustig, though.
I haven't heard of him.
No, me neither.
But I would love to.
Yeah. So I was thinking, okay, so I'm a teacher in the secondary school and all that. And sometimes I remember I had some students that, I don't know, for some time they were talking always about porn. And the thing that what I'm thinking all the time while I hear you is like, man, these guys don't know where they're getting into, no? How do you address this to young people in order for them to understand the damages, the danger that it can be in their own life? Because for what I see, it's just something to, I don't know, to laugh about, or I don't know, these kids is like to assume they're more manly or whatever. They are like, oh, I'm a grown up now. I watch porn every day or stuff like that. Some kids are like that.
Yeah, and I think it's just being like bold enough and kind of a little bit casual in taking the excuse me, I have a dog here. He's
don't worry.
I hope it's not hold on for a second. Jeg ved, du kan bare tage ham med, og så må jeg pive. Men hvorfor gå hen til menu? Okay, sorry.
It's all right. I like dogs. I don't have one, though.
Dog outside, so that's good for us.
That's okay.
So it's like we don't want to shame them off.
Yeah.
Because it's not their fault. I mean, basically, and these are my words and my theory, it's like we have just let porn take over. And kind of, it was like a tsunami that hit us, but we never knew. And all the big tech, the giant tech companies, they have just, they've just been surfing out there, and they've just unruled Wild West, been able to just take over the world, basically. So what we have to do is we have to kind of think their situation. And because, sexuality and is a big thing, and it's exciting, you're curious, but you're also a little bit timid about it. And depending on how old you are, you also have your own hormones and you're very interested in it. So you have to just be, casual, but also be very serious about it. But I would usually start talking about sex and just telling this is great. But keep it in the right places, depending on which forum you're in. If it's just ordinary young people, talk about sex, know that, it's a part of their life. And it's something that is something you should actually respect. and know that this is a part of you that is great and fantastic, but it can create babies. Be very forward about it. And then talk about how pornography is kind of warping the idea or the design of sex, so that they know that sex and porn are actually two different things. Because I think the population of the world today, generally, I'm speaking generally here, it's kind of twined in each other. So when is sex porn and when is porn sex? So to have young people actually define it, so that could be one thing that you can talk with them about. Okay, what's sex? That's what we did in our study. We did some focus groups where we wanted them to define, to see, do they actually at the age of 15 know the difference between what is sexuality, sex, and what is porn. And that was a really good exercise also for them to be contemplative and reflexive about it. And they were really good at knowing the differences. But the thing is, when you get with your peer groups, or you're on a website, or maybe you're doing some alcohol, then this part of the brain kind of gets pushed out. And then you're driving on your, the wants or the excitement or whatever. And that will always overrule being cautious, taking care, analyzing, evaluating, trying to say stop. That will just get overruled. So taking talks with them and kind of maybe just saying, if you see some of the kids looking at, and you're like, oh, what are you looking at? And then they'll probably go, oh. And if they feel that you're not timid about it, and you know a little bit about it, they really want to talk. But if they get a grown up who's like, what are you looking at?
Yeah.
You're going to say, oh, nothing.
Nothing.
So it's that delicate balance of trying to get in and start a talk with them so you can start educating them. That's really, really important. And of course, with younger children, you should just stop it, because it has no place in the life of younger children. And here I would say, our study shows that statistically they start using porn at the age of 12.8 years old.
Wow.
And it's a little bit different from, and it depends on how you ask the question, right? But here they start using porn and been exposed to porn from the age of 12.8, which means we have a lot who are younger and some who are a little bit older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Switching a little the topic, I remember, Dr. Jordan Peterson, which I am a fan of, he's a Canadian psychoanalyst. He was talking about how nowadays a young man or young woman, whatever, but he was talking about the young man in that moment, could see, like at the age of 15, many more women that another person would see in all his life, 50 years before.
Yeah.
And he said that that's like establishing a kind of polygamy relationship, because it's a sexual relation, and it's like in a certain way, with the whole thing of masturbating and whatever, like kind of identifying with the person on the screen. It's like having a little sexual relation with that video in this case. And he said that that's changing our society in a certain way. The whole thing that you were talking before about the consequences, he said, this is like you're having like a sexual relationship in your intimacy or whatever, with a ton of different women, a ton of different times, every day maybe. And there's not precedent, I don't know if this is a word in English, there's not something like that in the history, in the human history, treating sex in this way.
Yeah, exactly. And I totally agree. And I even use it with some of my clients to make them, think about every time you have you're on pornography, you have a small sexual interaction with that person or that woman. And then all of a sudden you have a lot of relationships that will kind of also give you the feeling of there's always one more out there. There's always, because it's endless. The internet is just endless with men or women engaging in sex out there. So it's also putting your mind in jeopardy, because it's like, I'm always looking for the more perfect, sex video, or the porn video, or the woman, how she looks like. And this can also, rub off in your personal life. So there are a lot of especially men who have a hard time in their relationships because they don't get aroused to their living, in flesh person, their wife, or the woman that they're, living with, having a relationship with, because they've conditioned their mind into all the others on the internet. And that is what, getting back to the neural pathways, they've built up their like path to arousal and path to what gives them a kick into having like the sexual activation with the, acting out. So that gives a gap in relationships, and it's also, twisting the minds so that the multiple relationships, pornography is definitely doing
And
that, and which is damaging
it
the world.
it breaks them out. And also, I was thinking while you were talking, while you were saying this, that in certain ways perfectly understandable. So just let's say I'm a single person, not even someone in a relationship. I consume porn, and then I don't know, have a girlfriend or get married or whatever, and the person I'm with is not with the measures that the people I see in videos. The perfect body is something totally different. Then the things that this person does in the bed with me are not the same at all as the things that I can watch in the porn video. So then you feel, I don't know, some kind of disappointment in your life and some kind of frustration.
Absolutely. And actually, that's one of the things our study also shows. The young people, they we had questions for them, and they would say that they were very disappointed when they had sex the first time.
Wow.
Because they've been affected by the pornography. So we have, your statement actually documented in our study.
You have wrong expectations, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I wanted to talk about two more things, and we can close because we've been already 40 minutes. A few myths. One of them probably is not a myth, or is a myth in part. You tell me. For what you've seen, porn is not something that. Let me phrase this. Usually, is associated the consuming of porn to men, and we talked about the erectile dysfunction, all the stuff. Do women consume porn as much as men, or do they consume different kinds of porn? Actually, I remember and probably this had something to do with the whole Twilight saga and all that stuff, but there was this porn site that took some of the statistics of what kind of videos did women watch, and they said that the women watched videos of kind of vampires and werewolves, and also some things like how do you say this, sex group, or groupal sex, or whatever like that. More that was like the highest scores in the women. Do women actually consume porn as men, and do they have I don't know, the same amount of problems and all that?
Yes, and it's a really good question. It's something that should be brought much more out, to talk about. According to, we had in Denmark, we had a huge survey in 2019 that came out, the largest in the world, where we asked the entire population. So it was a survey which I think was about 60,000 of the Danes answered, and it shows us that no, women do not watch porn as much as men, but they're quite up there. Like, I can't remember the exact figures, but I think it was like almost 90% of men from 15 to 89 years old. And women, I think it was in the 60s or 70s. I'm not quite sure. So it's up there, but it's not quite as much. I haven't myself really researched the differences of porn, but I can see the differences from what we see in our study and things that I read around that it is different kinds of porn that they're interested in. Like in our study, a lot of the young girls, they were attracted to choking sex.
Wow.
Choking.
Yeah. I was
which
thinking.
is quite dangerous. And I think that porn has also distorted their thinking. And usually when you see choking sex, it's the male choking the female. So you as a woman, of course, identify with the persons on, the set, the video. So maybe some of the more aggressive, or being a group, it's usually the woman, and you'll have 3 or 5 men around you. So you will identify with, the person in the video that represents you the most.
Yeah.
And I think for women, it's also emotionally. So you've got like 50 Shades of Grey, which really boomed out there. So it's, they're getting into women in other ways that are more psychological and emotional more than the physical or the bam, bam, bam,
Yeah.
Typically. And then, all of these big porn companies, they have psychologists, psychoanalysts. They have people who know how the brain works. They have them on their role pay. I mean, their check list where they pay them to work out what kind of, porn do we need on our sites to attract different kinds of people, because they know what will make them, get them in on their sites.
Yeah. One time I heard that if there is something that attracts people, they have been some kind of porn about it. Actually, I heard some YouTuber I follow. Sometimes he talked about, like how having sexual relationships with girls. Some of these girls actually asked him to choke him while they were doing their stuff and all that. And I was like, wow. Like I was thinking for what you said, how many of these behaviors can be, affected by this kind of porn and whatever. Okay. The other myth, we talked a little about this before we started the broadcast, but there's like this, I don't know if it's a myth or you explain, please, that says that porn could be good for, I don't know if it's how to say this, sexual assaulters or people that really have their mind messed up. I remember I remember an interview to this guy that was a rapist, and he said, please castrate me or I'll do it again. It's like something that he admits he's not going to control at some time. So sometimes I heard that actually porn could be good for this kind of people that have, their mind messed up already about sex. And I would like your opinion about it.
But like you said, a myth. And I would call it a myth that has just really kept on. The thing is, rapes, according to what I've read and know, have gone up exponentially. So if porn was to really, set down the percentage of rapes going on, we would have seen down going instead of up going.
Yeah, because porn has increased.
Yes, exactly. And also the type of porn. A lot of the porn is it's kind of like rape, where, people are taken to do sexual things against their will. So it's not with consent, which
but
is
that a kind of, my wonder with this is, okay, everything, I don't know if everything about porn is like fantasy. So do we as humans or whoever consumes this, do we have that kind of fantasy of, some people might have the fantasy of having sex against their will, for example, or having, I don't know, a woman having sex with 5 different men at the same time or stuff like that. Is that like a part of the fantasy that we already have and the porn industry uses it? And it's like, the thing that
I would say it's probably the other way around.
Okay.
The porn industry has just gotten all over the place. So they've actually hijacked our fantasy.
Wow.
So a lot of people say that porn, gives inspiration, but I would actually say that it's really punctuating. I mean, it's ripping your imagination to pieces, because if you've seen a lot of things out there, where's your imagination? Then it gets put into your head, and it's like just a film that you can, roll again. Like you said that you remember seeing that from an early age.
Yeah.
That picture you can probably recall again, maybe not being traumatized this time, but
I still remember that image.
yeah. And the thing is that you can get aroused even by something that you would never want to do, and then you can get in conflict with yourself, saying, if I'm aroused, it must be something that I like or something I'm into. So some people, they might have an innate, let's say about children, that they have sexual thoughts about children. And some people will have that without them wanting to. Okay. So we're not talking about pedophiles, because they are the ones that, they will work out. They will act out on their thoughts.
Yeah, just someone that has the fantasy of having something,
they will
of
have
being
this
attracted
in
to
them,
feel.
but they will not act out on it, because they know that this is wrong to do so. And they work with themselves, and they try not to do anything about it and work with that. But when you get into letting it go and working with it, and maybe going on port sites, it for a lot will escalate, and to maybe for some that you also want to try it out in real life.
Yeah.
Because sometimes enough is not enough. And then you have to go out and try the real thing. And the same with the rape. All over the world, we have issues with consent when it comes to being sexual, engaged, active with someone. And in Denmark, we've just passed a law that you have to have consent before having sex with anybody. You have to have like a real consent. One thing is the law. Something else is now putting it into action and teaching everybody from small that, just because she's smiling at you, or she wants to be with you and start holding your hand, is not like a given consent to now we can have sex.
Yeah.
And I think a long part of the way that you have a lot of rape that is not in the statistics. We know in Denmark, at least, it's a huge gray zone, and the rapes have gone up. The police have not recorded all the rapes. All the rapes are not, especially women. Men do get raped too, but they don't report it, because they're like, did I get raped? Did I give him, signs of maybe I wanted to? Did I not say no? Did I say yes? And then the thing is, if she's doubting about it, then she did not give her consent, right? So this is like a huge gray zone area. So porn does not help people not do the bad and criminal things. And that's both my theory about it, my thoughts about it, but also research that is gradually showing this.
Yeah, I was thinking for the people that might say, for example, the rapes is a fact that in Spain too they have risen, no, the number of rapes, especially the number of rapes in which they have several men with a woman, or even for young men and for young women. The thing is, here we have actually a very famous case, because there was this group that called themselves the Herd, and the Herd are in jail now because they were with a girl, and the whole thing of consent came up, and first she said yes and then no, and whatever. But they have been more cases and more cases about these things now. So my question would be, and this is a question I just leave there, is if people don't agree that porn is the cause of the number of increasing number of we we could see the facts, and maybe there's something cultural for sure, and the way of we understand sex or whatever, but there had to be a cause by which this number of rapes has increased, I guess, right? Heidi, we've been here 55 minutes. That's a lot. And I'm really, really thankful. The last thing I would like to do is, for people to check your website. And here I have it translated actually in English, because Google is magnificent and it translates everything, but the original is actually in Danish, right? So could you explain a little what people can find in this website? Actually, I'm going to leave this.
On our website, you can find the report. It's in Danish, though, unless I don't. It's a PDF, of course, so you're going to have to open the PDF and then put it in a Google translation. But we'll have the small version soon and put it on our website. You can find different, we don't have blogs structured as that, but we do have a site, a page where you can go in and look at some of the news or the blogs that we have. We also have the one that is called Knowledge, menu right there, where you can find some information of different kinds. We have a little guide where if you want to talk to kids about it, which is of course also, and that's the one popping up right there in Danish. So it's just, you can get some kind of general information about it. Yeah, that's the one with different things that you can go in and learn more about. And hopefully within the next year, we will have a site that will be directed to both parents, youth, and professionals. This is kind of just an all-around site about our organization and some small, facts of health and help and what we're doing and how we're supporting the political, because that's actually a huge part of our work. We're pressing forward to have what we called age verification or age assurance, because we want to force the tech companies to put in systems that will make sure that kids don't get access to pornography. And several countries throughout the world are working on this. And our association, we've worked with the Danish politicians and government to work on this. And we've really put our, thumbprint, our fingerprint on this area the last year or two, especially where we've had our report and we can, give them the Danish data, but put it up on what's going on around in the world as well. So this is something that we really desperately need, is for kids not to get access to pornography, because that's where, the misery really starts, basically. So that, and then also helping parents take charge and being responsible. Yeah.
Yeah, probably that's the one of the main,
even though it's
more
not so
important
comfy.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I just remembered. I remember when the actually with the show Game of Thrones came up, and Game of Thrones is like very strong. It has very strong scenes of sexual relations. The feeling that I had like watching this series, it was that, okay, they are not doing just a little more, because this would be considered a porn series. And my I don't know, my feeling was that they were like pushing the line all the way they could, but just not to be so explicit that this is porn. But to me, this was like the introduction of porn into let's say normal TV shows and everything, and in the way that like we can show this in HBO, and we can show this for a massive public, but not for a porn website, of course, because this would be another niche for public, for audience.
I think, for sure. But and that's it's you've also got all the big reality shows where sometimes it basically is porn, isn't it? But they put it into the reality show, because thing is, sex always sells.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it digs into our emotions, our sexual reproductivity, our well-being, but not well-being anyway, because people they don't know how it affects them. So I think that's a huge problem too, how like a pornographic, how they've twisted sexuality into those shows, and it becomes almost like porn, and they let it happen. So it's a normalization of a hypersexual world that
Content.
we have
Yeah.
now. And it takes like an organization or people like us to say, is this okay?
Yeah.
And it takes courage, but I have a feeling that more and more they're looking at and saying, uh-oh, something's wrong here. So when you have a huge group of young people who are sharing a sex video with underage, which happened in Denmark in 2019, where the American police had to knock on Denmark's door and say, we have these threads and it all leads, to Denmark here. And everybody's saying, how could this happen? Why are the kids doing this? And I'm like, oh, come on, you got to be kidding me. But because
it's been happening
I'm
for
specialized in it, so
Yeah.
I know what's going on. But most people in general, they don't have a clue. But in my world, porn is initiating a lot of all this. The revenge porn, the sharing, the hurtcore, a lot of bad stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Heidi, we've talked a lot of things. I would like for you to give a last counsel to people. We said before that there's an escape for people that might be involved in this. What would you say to people that might have problems with this, or to people that is not in this, but that they shouldn't fall in this, I guess?
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave you.
Okay. First of all, I think, you have to think about it and give it some thought. And then you have to take your decision on it. And whether it's something you haven't engaged in or you are engaged with, you have to be honest with yourself. And usually I say, talk with somebody about it, because it thrives in, a secretness. So talk with somebody. And if you have a problem or an issue, or you feel that you're even addicted, or maybe you're pressing it out on a partner, then you should seek counsel and seek help. And I'm sure that even in Spain, I know that throughout the most countries in the world, there are either organizations or there are counselors who are qualified to help in a very empathetic way, so that you can feel heard and listened to, and you can get the help that you need. And you should know that if you have a problem with pornography, it also will affect your partner, your spouse, and indirectly also your children, if you have children. So look at yourself, take charge, talk with somebody, and do something. You need to do something about it.
Wow, Heidi, thank you so much. Thanks for your time, for being here. I think I've learned a lot, and I hope the audience liked it too. And I'll upload this video to the YouTube channel so people can share it.
And if I can just say to the very end here is, remember that sex is beautiful under the right circumstances, but we need to learn about sex too.
Yeah.
And educate ourselves. So
yeah. Sex is beautiful. It's like the perfect phrase to finish. Yeah. Well, Heidi, again, thanks so much. It's been my pleasure to have you here. And everybody that has been here, thank you for following us and accompanying us. And I'll just finish the stream. Next week we have a new program with more people invited. So we'll see you soon. Take care y a cuidarse mucho. Hasta luego.